It's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Like many churches, our church has often used that great recitation by S.D. Lockridge that declares that Sunday's coming, that we might be going through a Calvary experience, but ahead of us lies a resurrection experience, and it's fast approaching. And maybe this year, as we approach Easter, that sentiment is more apt and more appropriate than ever before. You know, I grew up in the terrorist violence of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And behind me, just in the background, is Narrowwater Castle, which was the scene of one of the greatest slaughters and loss of life of that entire terrorist campaign. And yet, we are now, with the coronavirus crisis, we are now living through times that are potentially more deadly and are going to cause a greater negative effect on Ireland than the 25 years of the Troubles. So I want to send this message from Evangelical Alliance Ireland to pastors and church leaders, because I know that we're all facing situations that we were never prepared for or trained for. We're all being stretched like never before. We're all having to rely on Jesus day by day in rapidly changing situations, trying to lead the people of God forward. You know, the Taoiseach, now for those of you not here in the Republic, that's our Prime Minister in Ireland, the Taoiseach gave a speech on Wednesday, and in that speech he was reportedly quoting C.S. Lewis when he said this. He said, "Everyone's a bit scared, but we're a little less scared together." He then went on to say, "I hope some kids who are stuck at home will read the Chronicles of Narnia." Now, you know what, I'm just one of these people who has to check things out. Whenever I get an email, whenever I get something sent to me on Facebook or WhatsApp, I always check it out. I don't want to unwittingly pass on something that's untrue or an urban legend. And so I wasn't familiar with that quote of C.S. Lewis, even though I've read much of his stuff. It sounded good. It sounded like something C.S. Lewis would have said, but I thought, I've never heard that before. And I couldn't find that quote anywhere in the writings of C.S. Lewis. In fact, I found it in the writings of a guy called Charlie Mackesy. And this is where it really gets interesting, because our Taoiseach meant to quote C.S. Lewis, and I can understand why he might have made an error, but actually Charlie Mackesy is a Christian evangelist. Charlie Mackesy he's an artist, and he was an atheist. Some years ago, he was at the Glastonbury Festival, and a band was playing a cover version of the gospel song, "Oh Happy Day," and the Spirit of God touched Charlie Mackesy's heart, and he just began to cry and weep and say, "There's got to be more to life than this." And as a result of that, he gave his life to Jesus Christ. He's a frequent speaker at Holy Trinity Brompton in London, and in fact, as an artist, has provided the graphics for some of Nicky Gumbel's books and pamphlets. And he's a frequent speaker at Holy Trinity Brompton. But Charlie recently released a book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse. And it's been described as the new Winnie the Pooh. Some wonderful, wise and tender thoughts. And in that book there is the quote where it says, "Everyone's a bit scared," said the horse, "but we're a little less scared together." Well, you know, even though our Taoiseach thought he was quoting C.S. Lewis, I'm still amazed that he would then say that he would recommend that kids should read the Chronicles of Narnia. And I can understand why he would have thought that quote was from the Chronicles of Narnia. Because the 5th book in the Chronicles of Narnia is called The Horse and His Boy. And that book is full of overcoming fear. And there is conversations between a boy and a horse, and so I can understand why the Taoiseach would have connected with that. And actually that gives me a great sense of hope, because it tells me that he wasn't just regurgitating something from a speechwriter, but this is actually part of who he is and what he's read. Because you see, in The Horse and His Boy, the key themes are overcoming fear and the providence of God. Now, one of the reasons why I'm filming in this location is that this scene behind me, it is Narnia. Whenever C.S. Lewis, the Christian writer, wanted to write those children's books with great Christian themes to them, this was the area where he used to take his holidays as a child. And he used the Carlingford Lough and the mountains here on both sides of the border as, if you like, the topography for Narnia. So I'm actually bringing you this message today from overlooking Narnia. And whenever C.S. Lewis wrote those books, you know, they were full of the themes of wickedness and greed and sin, but being overcome by the power of a sacrificial death and a resurrection, and redemption for those who have fallen into wickedness. Very powerful themes that, of course, are central to the Christian gospel. And The Boy and His Horse is all about overcoming fear and the fact that God's divine providence is caring for us even when we don't feel like He's there. There's a part in that book where Shasta, one of the main characters, he gets lost in a fog. And he's separated from his companions, and he feels a mysterious presence nearby. So he starts talking to this mysterious presence, and he tells this presence about his misfortune, that on 2 occasions he's ended up being chased by lions and barely escaped with his life. And then the voice speaks to him, and it turns out that his companion is Aslan, the lion, a figure of Jesus Christ. And Aslan says, "I was the lion who forced you to join with Aravis. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept. I was the lion who gave the horses the new strength of fear for the last mile so you could reach King Luna in time. And I was the lion you do not remember, who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat, wakeful at midnight, to receive you." So I can understand, if our Taoiseach is familiar with that book, I can understand why he would attribute that quote to it. Everyone's a bit scared, but we're a little less scared together. You know, I think it's wonderful that our national leader at this time of crisis is encouraging children to read books with such overtly Christian themes. In fact, back on St. Patrick's Day, the Taoiseach gave a speech, and I thought it was a good speech. Personally, I thought it was a powerful speech. And David Blevins, Sky News' Ireland correspondent, on his personal Facebook page, he said what a good speech he thought it was. And David is, by the way, is a Christian believer. And somebody commented on it, well, it's a shame that he didn't call the nation to repentance in Jesus Christ. And David gave what I thought was an absolutely wonderful response. He said, that's not the Taoiseach's job, that's your job. And I get what he's saying, because it's the church's job to lift up Jesus. It's the church's job to call the nation to repentance and to call the nation to prayer. And that is what we are doing. Since, you know, we celebrated St. Patrick's Day as a national day of prayer. Since then, we've organised an online prayer rota, so we have people lifting up Ireland in prayer every minute of every hour of every day, 7 days a week. That's continuing on going forward. It's our job to pray. It's our job to call the nation to repentance and to faith. And it's the Taoiseach's job and the other politicians to lead the country forward to face this crisis in a sensible and a wise way. And that's why we are praying for those leaders as well. But I personally just think that God is doing something in the hearts of our leaders, that He would prompt the Prime Minister of our country to call the children of this nation at this time to actually be reading books with such an overtly Christian theme, written by a great Christian thinker, C.S. Lewis, but also that he would use a wonderful quotation by a Christian evangelist as well. Be encouraged. It might feel like Friday, but Sunday's coming.